So today's topic is about a book I read called Divergent. Divergent is a dystopian sci-fi novel and also the first book of the Divergent trilogy. It follows the main character, 16-year-old Beatrice Pryor, or Triss, as she goes through an epic journey leading to the transition from childhood to maturity. The story takes place in a post-apocalyptic Chicago where survivors have been divided into 5 personality trait-based factions. Those factions are Abnegation the Selfless, Amity the Peaceful, Candor the Honest, Dauntless the Brave, and lastly Erudite the Intelligent. There's also another group called the Factionless, aka the homeless of that society, and it is made up of those who do not belong to any faction. So they are cast out and ostracized by the other factions aside from Abnegation. So you might be wondering, how exactly is this book related to the real world if it's a fictional story? Well, at first, Divergent seems to be a popular young adult action-packed novel about bravery, love, and even perseverance. But once you dive a little deeper into Veronica Roth's world of Divergent, you will start to notice how closely it reflects history, like how it can be related to the revolutionary ideas of communism and capitalism. For example, the factions were created in hope to stop future wars and violence. People believe that if each person selects their faction and focuses only on their faction's morals, then everyone will be equal and there won't be any more conflicts. That can be related to communism. As you may know, a communist society is where resources are created and distributed equally among all members. However, capitalism promotes free enterprise, which is in this society, individuals benefit and prosper based on their own innovation and productivity. Unfortunately, selfishness arises in a capitalist government as people compete to sell the ideas they think are best, whereas in a communist government, selfishness fails to exist due to the encompassing sense of equality and selflessness. In the faction called Abnegation, all members are required to be selfless in all the actions they endeavor, and that can also be related to communism. Erudite, the highly intelligent bookworm faction, can be connected to the capitalist ideals, as they want to obtain more control of the government and reject the communist ideals of abnegation. In Divergent, Abnegation is the faction that does have control over the government, but of course, Erudite opposes this and believes that intelligence would rule better than selflessness. The idea of capitalism falls under the members in the Erudite faction because they are basically just being selfish by wanting to take over the government and promote their ideas and technologies, while in fact they are disregarding abnegation was put into control for a reason. Most people believe that Triss is a threat to this society because the fact that she is divergent, and that means she can't fall under the spell of the manipulative erudite serums and trackers. Triss is also divergent because she can both be capitalist or erudite and act selfishly, or she can be a communist, which is divergent, and act selflessly. Because of her mixed personality, she puts the faction system in jeopardy. Besides it being quite interesting to see how these classical ideas indirectly appear in Divergent, once you unravel these historical aspects of the novel, one can see how it is very difficult to achieve peace in a world full of divisions and inequalities. However, it is also challenging to achieve peace in a society where only one group has control over everything and everyone must follow their say. Now I'm going to talk about some of the key points to the plot. I chose 3 of them. The first one was when Triss had to take the aptitude test. That's the test that every 16-year-old has to take to help determine what faction they should be in. And Triss finds out that she's divergent, meaning that she has gotten more than one result on her test, when you're really only supposed to get one. In her society, you are considered a threat to the peaceful faction system if you are supposedly divergent. If you are caught, though, by the authorities, then normally you'd just be executed. Therefore, Triss is told to keep her new discovery a secret. The reason for this is because the authorities believe that divergents are dangerous people, and if they continue to exist, then they will cause uproars of violence and rebellion. In reality, people who are divergent simply are immune to almost all the serums developed by erudite. That means they can't be controlled, so that strikes fear in the higher-ups, leaving them to think that they have no choice but to kill all the divergents. The second key point I chose was when Triss was making a life-changing decision. There's a saying where it says faction before blood, meaning on the day of the choosing ceremony, you will have to have the choice to leave the faction you were raised in and leave your family for another faction forever, or you can stay in the faction you were raised in for the rest of your life. Triss faces this decision and chooses to leave her family behind in abnegation, and she joins Dauntless. Her choice not only surprises her family, but surprises herself too. My third choice was when, towards the end, you find out how erudite and Dauntless leaders were working together and scheming to use simulation serum to trick the Dauntless-born and initiates as soldiers to take out some of the abnegation, so that hopefully abnegation's leaders will surrender, so then erudite will successfully overthrow abnegation's place in government. However, the plan failed due to Triss defeating the leader of erudite. The next thing I did was I found some common themes inside of the story. The first one being identity and choices. In Divergent, your choice of faction defines you more than anything else does. As I mentioned before, Triss was faced with two options: remain with her family in the faction in which she grew up, abnegation, or transfer to another faction and have a fresh start. Second, fear. Dauntless members' main characteristic is bravery. So, the Dauntless initiates spend a lot of time confronting their fears in fear landscapes, working to move past them and refusing to be tormented by them any longer. But a lot of times during the initiation and beyond, our characters are forced to question what exactly constitutes bravery. Third, societal classes. As previously stated, the entire lives of the citizens in Divergent are determined by what faction they are in. The only freedom they are granted is the ability to choose their faction, but even then, their decisions are heavily influenced by the faction they grew up in. Typically, the jobs are Amity are farmers and counselors, erudite teachers, abnegation run the government, Candor handle the law, and Dauntless are in charge of the city's security. Your leisure activities of choice correspond to those promoted by your faction, and you are meant to marry within the faction as well. If you prove not fit in the faction of your choice, you become factionless and considered to be below all the other faction members in status, and you are forced to live homeless for the rest of your life in the dangerous city. Fourth, secrets and lies. The most notable secret Triss keeps is her divergence. Because of the way divergents are being persecuted in her society, it would be disastrous to reveal to the world the results of her aptitude test. Number 5, values. Previously stated, the society is organized into factions based solely on 5 virtues: intelligence, honesty, peacefulness, selflessness, and bravery. And each faction works intensively to manage only its respective trait, ignoring the rest. This often leads to friction. Candor loathes Amity for how frequently they lie to keep the peace, and abnegation turns up their noses to erudite, believing that intelligence can yield greed. Roth's intention was to show the importance of all 5 of these values. By acknowledging just one and disparaging the others, citizens are in many ways worse off than they would have been if not sorted into these factions at all. Number 6, power. The lust for power and its damaging effects is personified by the character Janine Matthews. As the leader of Erudite, she attempts to control the Dauntless and destroy abnegation, willfully lying to the rest of the population in the process. Power makes her cruel and ruthless. The theme of power also appears in a much subtler, stronger way in the novel. It happens when the struggle between the Dauntless initiates try to reach the top of the ranking, and it ends up bringing the worst out of many of them. Last, family. The saying, "faction before blood," is drilled into the heads of all faction children as they approach their choosing day, and throughout the rest of their lives after that. Citizens are meant to stay loyal to their faction above all else, even above their family, but Triss constantly finds the ties to her family in abnegation pulling at her during her Dauntless initiation. In Triss's world, 16-year-olds have to choose between family and identity, a decision that is extremely rare in our own world. To wrap things up, I think this book is a great choice if you're into sci-fi novels with a dystopian, futuristic vibe to it. Although the intended audience was for young adults, I anticipate that it can still be an enjoyable book to wider age ranges. Anyways, thanks for watching.